Alright, go for it.
Twinkle, twinkle.
I thought you were going to do ABC.
L, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P.
Rebellion by rebels. Many agencies are reporting that rebellion fever continues as peoples of many nations around the world take part in the destruction of their own neighborhoods, towns, businesses, government buildings, and other infrastructure facilities as fighting intensifies before, during, and after they overthrow their democratically elected governments and replace them with open military dictatorships, whom they must fight in order to achieve the original intended goal of true independence, effectively creating two enemies out of one. Just like the Rodney King riots and other riots in the United States in our history, these violent actions only result in the destruction of the facilities that we need as a community to survive. We must, as a people, peacefully use constitutional methods and not reject them if we wish to escape the fate of nations such as Libya, Egypt, Greece, China, Venezuela, Ivory Coast, and others. Such repercussions of those type of actions include children growing up in war zones, food, water, and other necessities being scarce and hoarded for military use, as well as the nightmare of living under war, who has no master and seemingly has no time schedule, especially in the area of ending conflict. In the not too distant past of the United States, peaceful methods of correcting many of the serious problems we face today as a nation have been employed. Each such case has more than one example, proving that while not perfect, adhering to constitutional methods results in peaceful resolutions to major crises where war was once the accepted and only method and is now being used again as such. The ability to resolve both internal and international unrest in a peaceful manner has always been the stated goal of the organization known as the United Nations, a goal that they have always ultimately failed to achieve. The framers of the Constitution of the United States of America, the Declaration of Independence, and later the all-important Bill of Rights, in their memoirs and other publications, were explicit in their intent in stating that the new United States alliance was their solution to the paradigm of authoritarian, centralized control and imperialistic expansion of such. The peace, freedom, prosperity, and dominatingly undeniable strength of this alliance of autonomous individual states was meant to serve as an example to other peoples who want the same for their own communities, regions, and nations. Independent, prosperous, peaceful, stable, and self-reliant nations have no reason to bring destruction upon their neighbors offensively, as the inevitable domino effect of this is allowed to take place naturally. Less internal conflict with the ability to spill over to the international community will take place or even be possible, creating more and more security for all as time passes. It is imperative that the occupants of all nations create their own form of social independence, because the people that create liberty own liberty. A people must decide of their own volition to create an atmosphere for themselves where prosperity is possible. Otherwise, said societies inevitably become dependent upon the peoples who create or claim to create such an atmosphere. Knowledge of this is basic reality and can be and is used for the purposes of imperialistic expansion and installation of global economic systems in the name of the same unachieved goals of the United Nations. A new global economic system is crashing itself even before it is completed, further fueling the worldwide economic and political unrest. The private bank, known today by the name of the Federal Reserve, is federal in name only and is not the first centralized economic monopoly to exist in the United States, nor would it be the first to legally and peacefully be disbanded should that occur again. The two other times in U.S. history in which centralized monetary control was disassembled saw the rise of great individual prosperity and freedom, and both times were true golden American eras, where the largest percentages of art, scientific discoveries, production, wealth, peace, prosperity, and true medical advances were made. Without the economic freedom of a non-interest-bearing currency and a non-debt-based, production-based society, the only advancements possible are the ones that serve the proverbial bottom line. The definition of capitalism as defined by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary reads, an economic system characterized by private or corporate ownership of capital goods, by investments that are determined by private decision, and by prices, production, and the distribution of goods that are determined mainly by competition in a free market. Practically speaking, a true capitalist system thrives on creating competition in every sector via the promise and possibility of personal profit. This is accomplished when, for instance, the manufacture of a product is successful. When others see this success and duplicate the process, they must order raw materials. The increased orders for raw materials reduce their price by increasing demand. The increase in demand also creates opportunity for, and thus formation of, sources for the same raw material. These natural and innovated byproducts of a true capitalist system inevitably result in products at ever-increasing quality available to the end user at ever-decreasing prices. Any currency based on such a model can only increase in value. Capitalism is also known as a production-based system because of these facts, and is more made possible due to the economic freedom of not being forced to pay interest on the printing of said currency. In short, the average person can see and understand that prosperity is assured as long as one is willing to work hard for it. Inversely, a fractional reserve debt-based economy, as defined by economicsdictionary.com, is a banking system in which banks hold a certain liquid cash ratio to cover immediate demand to clients. In most banking systems, a reserve ratio is required by law. And as defined by investorwords.com, as a banking system in which only a fraction of the total deposits managed by a bank must be kept in reserve. The amount of deposits equals the amount of reserves times the deposit multiplier. In the U.S., this system is maintained by the Federal Reserve Board. The Board of Executives of a private bank determines the amount of money that must be held in the vaults of all other banks in the United States. The Board of Executives of a private bank determines the amount of money that must be held in the vaults of all other banks in the United States. In a system largely dominated by computer transactions and not paper money, loans of up to 100 times the amount of money banks hold in their vaults are made. This was also true before computers utilizing such devices as checks. It is important to note that under a capitalist system, devices such as checks and debit cards would still function in exactly the same way that they do today for the average account holder. The differences involve the inability of banks to create money out of thin air via electronic and non-currency physical devices. These methods would simply reflect the true amount of liquid holdings. Put plainly, banks would be held to the same standard as the average account holder. Using anything less than this system, it is difficult to expect corruption and currency devaluation not to occur. Indeed, it is the only possible outcome, benefiting the very few and working to the great detriment of the overwhelming vast majority. Capitalism, true capitalism, by definition, benefits the overwhelming vast majority while keeping the small amount of would-be monopoly holders in check. Despite these differences in definition and operation, as well as the fact that the United States of America's system is a fractional reserve banking model, mainstream media, general education, and political scientists that pose as representatives to the citizenry constantly use the definitions of fractional reserve banking to demonize what they term as, quote, the American system of capitalism, and further use this definition as the antithesis to communism, when in fact the U.S. system employs no part of capitalism by definition, and communism is a system of centralized government power enabled by a central bank and a fractional reserve banking system. While true capitalism, by definition, is an economic system that enables the average person to achieve success proportional to the amount of work they complete, and is the funding mechanism by which a democratic republic operates with the consent of each citizen. Under our current fractional reserve model, citizens, generation by generation, can only expect less for more work. Devaluation of currency, centralization of power, the necessity of foreign wars and treaties that benefit other nations while drawing wealth away from the United States in order to stem downward spiraling economies, and goods and services of ever decreasing value at ever increasing prices until, in the words of Thomas Jefferson, their descendants wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Today is Monday, March 7th, 2011. We're coming to you from the west coast of North America. I'm Davis. Welcome to this 4th edition of Common Sense News.
Common sense, noun, sound practical judgment that is independent of specialized knowledge, training, or the like. Good sense and sound judgment in practical matters, normal native intelligence. Common Sense. Published in 1776, Common Sense challenged the authority of the British government and the royal monarchy. The plain language that Paine used spoke to the common people of America, and was the first work to openly ask for independence from Great Britain. Common Sense News.